There are some things I'll take a chance on, but life is already enough of a gamble for me to put my whole nest egg in the share market. So I take a calmer path. By investing in private credit, I know my money could be growing, not yo-yoing.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
15th of October, it's great to be here with you. I'm Nadine Blaney and this is AusBiz. So let's get cracking, shall we? Because it's a positive session on this local market. So we've got the COB Australia Index up by a pretty solid percentage point. So nice to see that on the screen as we await the European and US market direction. For us, a little bit later on, we'll dissect the market with Mark Gardner from MPC Markets in just a few moments. We had quite a lot of news from the banking space, including the fact that Matt Comyn will remain at the helm of CEO. The company did hold its AGM, so we heard some commentary coming from the company around, AI and the like. So we also had a result coming from the Bank of Queensland and a bit of an update coming from Westpac as well in relation to its capital requirements. Now, the golden ceiling. I had a chat with Greg Metwajev from BCR, I think it is. And look, he was sort of talking about the volatility that we're seeing in many asset classes, also gold and silver. So whereas he would not be brave enough to call it a top for gold by any stretch of the imagination, I think his point was that, we are seeing more volatility and that it's unlikely to die down any soon and that it's going to be hard work to get past this breach to sort of the 5,000 level for gold, for example. And I hope you've been catching our coverage from the City Investment Conference. It's their big yearly conference held in Australia and New Zealand. We spoke about property. Oh boy, I'm going to leave somebody out, so I won't even go down that road. But all of that data, I should say the interviews, are online on our website, ausbiz.com.au, so you'll be able to catch up with them there. Insights from City analysts fresh from that conference. A very well-attended conference, that one is as well. Okay, so let's check in on sectors. Speaking of gold, well, Evolution Mining did come out with a production update and it's off by 3%, but otherwise still looking good in this hot sector. There's the banks with all the news associated, and also it was one of the well-performing sectors overall. Energy was the exception to the rule for the most part. We can see that we've got Karoon, Woodside, and Santos. So those companies that really move in relation to the oil price coming under a bit of pressure. To our top stories, and Commonwealth Bank Chief Executive Matt Comyn will remain in the role, as I mentioned. It's for about 3 more years. Meanwhile, that Westpac story is APRA removing that extra $500 million Westpac has been required to hold on its books since that money laundering scandal. Bank of Queensland saw a jump in annual cash profit after a surge in commercial lending. And Evolution Mining strengthening its outlook for FY26, but clearly the market's not buying into it. And copper operation for 29Metals are on hold while the company reduces excess water at the site. Meantime, Drone Shield launching a new software platform to control large-scale counter-drone operations, not enough to lift its share price higher. Jumbo Interactive is looking to acquire dream car giveaways in the UK, a business which it says is growing strongly. And Nova Minerals has really soared. Really soared. After a request from the ambassador to the United States, Kevin Rudd, regarding one of its Alaskan operations ahead of the Albanese-Trump meeting that's coming up on Thursday. Let's see what Mark Gardner has kept his eye on. He's joining us from MPC Markets. Let's stick with some corporate stuff, Mark. Tilix, best performer. What was going on there?
Probably due a win.
Yeah.
So we had, obviously Tilix got pretty hammered a few months ago, and from our perspective, it was a lot of, the move was quite shocking. A lot of the analysts were retrofitting, the whys of what was happening. And there was some fairly thin investment theses around why it dropped. Essentially, they're not really affected by tariffs. They actually benefit from tariffs because they've got 31 plus manufacturing things in the operations in the States, etc. But they upgraded their guidance from I think 750 to 770 million to 800 to 820. So not much of an upgrade, but still, not going in the other direction like many thought it would. So it wasn't up much on Nasdaq overnight, but
16% here.
It's up 16% here. So
punchy.
But I think it's the coast is clear now. And the big show is still that new FDA approval for their new drug. That will really push it back into the 20s. But I think now you're probably saying that bottom's fairly firmly set.
Yeah, so that full year 2025 guidance upgrade, came yesterday, but we did see its target price lifted to $27.10 by Jefferies today. Although Morgan Stanley has pulled its back a little bit to $25.40, but you still like Telix?
Oh, absolutely. I think it'll be back above $30 within 12 months. And there's 3 other analysts that cover it. And they've all got price targets above 30. So they get that FDA approval, and that was only knocked back on manufacturing, which nearly 80% or 70 to 80% of all FDA approvals will get knocked back on that. It wasn't anything to do with safety or efficacy. So they're very easily workable problems. We may see an approval late this year, maybe early next year, but it can be sorted out within a few months.
I had a guest on couple of days ago, just jumping to another story, who was sort of saying, you've got Jamie Dimon leading JP Morgan, really charismatic, out there commenting on everything from politics to geopolitics, making the headlines in that way. And he said, was alluding to the fact that we don't have very charismatic CEOs here in Australia. Matt Comyn, not throwing shade, but Matt Comyn's done an incredible job at CBA. He's been there for a long time, and he's going to stay for another 3. So does that give investors assurance that it's in safe hands?
I think it does, absolutely. And the share price has done nothing but go up since he's been there. And it's always been. Macquarie's probably our favourite in terms of consistent ROI, but CBA is a pretty close second. And look, it's not his fault the share trades at a massive premium. That's there's the index flow and things like that. But the fact that all these index funds are so comfortable having that overweight in CBA, that's a comment on management for sure, because you wouldn't be doing that. You wouldn't be doing that if you didn't believe in management and who was at the helm. So, the Australian banking sector, as a credit spread trader in the GFC. That 4 pillars really saved our bacon, and I can kind of understand. The regulation here is very tight. However, when things go bad, that regulation really helps us and makes us incredibly stable. Probably one of the most stable banking jurisdictions in the world. Yeah,
we're lucky in that way. So week to date, the market is up by 0.25%, which is interesting considering we started Monday with calls for potential bloodbath on the market and all the rest, following on from what happened in New York on Friday. So what do you put this relative calm down to?
I think we should have done better this week, to be honest. And I think we unfortunately tend to follow the US down, but then not follow them up. Materials sector, realistically, we're having a scramble for critical minerals. Gold and silver and platinum are all going through the roof. It should be our time to shine, basically. So I'm a touch disappointed that we haven't gone a little bit higher overall, because you see some of the movements in the US mining stocks, and it's like, well, that's our domain. Why can't we get as bullish as them? But yeah, look, Volatility's gone back above 20 in the US. Obviously, they had Columbus Day. The government shut down. We got no figures. We took a little bit off the table today, just in gold miners.
What? I was going to say,
but we were fairly overweight, but more so because the Democrats and Republicans, we're in day 15 of that government shutdown. It's double the average length of a government shutdown. If we do see a resolution, it'll be a compromise on healthcare, which will be good for healthcare, the healthcare ETFs, which are pretty downtrodden. But also it'll be very good for the US dollar, which I dare say might take the heat out of gold, silver and platinum for the time being. It's the fastest $500 rally in gold ever, albeit relatively it's a bit smaller, but it's been quite an incredible run. I'd probably favour the likes of silver and platinum if there was going to be a short squeeze, would be in that. In London, you cannot now, the lease rates have been shut down for some banks. You can't lend to be short silver now. They've exploded. Normally they don't get above 30% per annum ever. They skip to 60, and then some banks won't even lend to be able to be short silver over there. They're flying it in as opposed to shipping it in. There's a shortage, such a shortage. So that I can still see silver probably going to the 60s, potentially 70s by the end of the year. But I think a resolution of the government shutdown will take the heat way out of it for a short period of time. So we're just taking a little bit off the table and flicking back into a very cheap defensive sector, which can have some decent growth in healthcare.
Cool, got it. Now, I know that you follow ASML quite closely.
Yes.
Results are coming out now. Third quarter bookings coming in above estimates. Does not expect 2026 sales to be below 2025 because we're getting some commentary from the CEO saying that, you know, demand around investments in AI continues to be strong, extending to more customers as well. But it does expect China customer demand and sales in China to decline significantly compared to 2024 and 2025. So it's saying, the CEO, that they'll provide more details on the 2026 outlook in January. You haven't seen this. I'm not asking for huge comment, but what does that sound like to you?
I think we'll still get, I mean, TSMC's tomorrow as well. That'll report earnings in our time. That'll probably be a better indicator of how the AI chip demand's going. Everything's all, you know, obviously been a lot higher, and they are getting more competitive on those thinner and thinner. Well, I can't remember the word. The photo. Yeah.
Don't look at me. Yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
How thin
how
thin the chips. Yeah, I have said it. I'm having a brain meltdown at the moment. But they are getting closer and closer, and with those inference chips coming out, which are more specific use chips, you don't need the 2 nanometer necessarily. You don't need those NVIDIA super high grade, because the software is getting better, and you're buying a chip for a specific task instead of just buying a brute force Blackwell chip from NVIDIA. So, and there is a lot of claims out there that China is getting close to the technology. Kai, our in-house expert, he's saying probably not, but that the inference chips does make it easier for them to use slightly less quality and slightly thicker to still get a similar result, and they're actually a little bit better on power as well. So there'll be some shifts and changes. I don't expect those ASML and NVIDIA to hold those enormous, borderline monopoly for NVIDIA and a monopoly for ASML. People will catch up eventually and eat away at them, but but obviously ASML being a monopoly, you know, you've got to pay attention to it, and but we'll see what happens. China's very hard to predict.
Yeah, yep. Well, ASML plans to announce a new share buyback program in January, but it does expect China sales to dip significantly, is the quote, in 2026. So I'm sure you'll go away and do your reading. We've got US earnings that you'll be catching up with as well.
Yes, banks. I mean, we had JP Morgan beat last night, but came off. The other banks that reported last night, including Wells Fargo, they were pretty good. Investment, it should have been good for Macquarie today. Wasn't massively all over it today, but investment bank and M&A activity really boosted their earnings. They just took Jamie Dimon's always errs on the side of caution. He's very cautious, I think, on capital requirements for bad loans, and that spooked the market a bit. I think you've got Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, a bunch of them for the rest of the week as well, and then we roll into a few of the Mag 7 next week.
Looking forward to it. Macquarie, just so you know, up by 1.5% today. Mark Gardner, MPC Markets, thank you. Nice to see you. All right, let's get to our stock of the day. It was Evolution Mining. Andrew Whiteland from DP Wealth Advisory and Henry Jennings from Markets Today.
Interesting as they continue to deleverage the balance sheet, now down to gearing around 11% from 15%. They don't have any debt repayments until FY29, which I would imagine that, given the current gold price, will not be too much of a problem, and they will be deleveraging continually. So that is all good news. You know, the question, I guess, is more to whether the gold sector continues to be the place to be, and whether gold is just become a meme or a meme stock, if you like, at the moment.
Potentially you should be taking some money off the table. Great result. And their cost of production is quite low. They're in the right space. But again, I keep going back to that picture of Martin Place where everyone's lined up outside that bullion company wanting to be buying gold and silver. Like, if that's not your amber flashing light that this is overdone, then there it is.
All right, so let's do this. Let's check in on the market leaders. Telex, as we were talking about with Mark Gardner. So yeah, some confidence in the outlook going forward. And Hyperion X, it came up on the call yesterday. It has come out with a bit of news. It's up by 12%. It's got, just a real backing when it comes to the overall defense/critical minerals thematic, also manufacturing in the good old US of A. James Hardie as well is looking pretty good, up by 5.3%. Now let's get to those laggards. So Drone Shield, despite that news I detailed earlier, off by about 10%. So yeah, we'll just keep an eye on that one. Really, maybe some even say overheating part of the market. GrainCorp is down as well. We have seen Bell Potter, though, re-rating GrainCorp after a positive crop lured bulls at Bell Potter. Analyst Jonathan Snap has lowered his recommendation to hold from buy, and that's taken a bit of a toll on the company overall. Small to mid-cap part of the market, Nova Minerals. Boy, we talked about that one earlier. That is a huge uptick. So ahead of Trump talking, got some backing from the Aussie ambassador there. Resolution, Lockley Resources, Energy Transition, and Critica all looking really good. But Paycheck is off by about 12% to just 5 cents per share. Elsight down for the second day in the row to $1.67. Now, what's happening overnight? We get the Fed beige book. So that gives us some insight into how regional and state economies are traveling. We'll get some commentary from businesses as well. Now, tomorrow we do get the RBA Governor, Michelle Bullock, speaking. We have a Nomura Research Forum, and that's where she's at. But the big one will be the labor force data, the unemployment data for September. We're expecting to see about 30,000 jobs potentially created. Any deviation from that in a meaningful way, of course, could cause volatility when it comes to the Aussie, and RBA watchers will be keeping a very close eye trained on that one. We always keep a very close eye trained on this market here locally. Bit of buying into the close for the S&P ASX 200, up by a percentage point, 8,990.9. Let's call it 991. Let's do that. All right, look, we've got that City Investment Conference material that's up online. If you haven't seen it, you might want to catch up on that. And just a public service announcement, this is your last chance to register for our Small Cap Big Ideas event that's being held tomorrow from 1 p.m. Hidden Gems. The event has a pretty good track record of uncovering some of these big winners for the coming years. And as a little bit of a bonus, I've got some guests that will be talking global SMIDs. So for those of you in the know, it's small to the mid-cap space in global markets. Very different proposition from the small end of the market here in Australia. I think you'll really enjoy it. All you have to do is go to ausbiz.co/smallcaps25. I hope you can do that. If you've missed it, listen to this.
Brought to you by Montgomery Investment Management. The world is volatile. Your financial future doesn't have to be. Find out more at montinvest.com.